Today on the podcast, I'm joined by the brilliant Sophie David, primary school teacher and a creator behind Little Happy Learners, a hugely popular Instagram account full of simple, joyful ideas to support early learning at home. Sophie has a real gift for making phonics feel accessible and fun for both children and parents, and I know you're going to come away from this episode with practical tips you can try straight away. So, Sophie, would you mind telling us a little bit about why you started Happy Little Learners and how it all began?
Yes, of course. I always have this question first, and I feel like I give the answer exactly the same every time. But I was a primary school teacher and an early years specialist. I absolutely loved early years. It was my passion. I never trained in early years. I always thought I'd teach the older children, but my first year of teaching put me in early years, and that's where I remained. I was able to dabble in some of the older years as well, and I worked with children in year 3 that were really struggling with phonics, and I worked in year 5. So I have done a broad range of teaching. And then when I had my own children, I decided to start Little Happy Learners. The reason I just needed an outlet, and that's how I used it at the beginning. I'd stopped teaching. I'm very creative. I just needed something to put my mind into. And so Little Happy Learners was born. At the start of our journey with Little Happy Learners, it was mainly crafts and play-based activities. And then slowly I started to drip feed some learning into it. And only 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I started sharing lots of phonics tips and tricks and how we do things. And it has blown up, which just shows the need and the desire for parents and educators. I have so many educators that follow me because they want to make learning fun and more accessible. So it just shows that I went from like 100,000 followers to nearly 1 million, all based on phonics. And I think that there just sums up exactly why I've made this transition into more phonics-based activities and learning through play, because there is such a need for it.
There really is. As I was saying to you just before we started the podcast, that my eldest has dyslexia and he's currently tracking about 2 years behind. So we're trying to secure the reception phonics, and I think it's stage 1, isn't it? And already your book, I can see that there's so much potential of how I can help make it more fun for him to learn something that he struggles with. Because obviously that's one of the big challenges, isn't it? Is when it's something that we struggle with, it's hard to keep interested. It's hard to stay motivated. And I know with him, he's very reluctant. So it's finding ways to bring the fun to teach those basics. So I think that's obviously what your page is helping other people learn how to do.
Absolutely. That reluctance comes from a lack of confidence. So one of the questions that I get asked regularly is like, my child's reluctant to read, my daughter's dyslexic, my son's dyslexic, they're really reluctant to start writing. What I always say is we need to start with where that reluctance comes from. And that reluctance usually comes from a lack of self-esteem and a lack of confidence in what they can and can't achieve. So what I always say is start from the very beginning and always just give them that confidence in those little steps and build up from there. Because quite often what we'll do is we'll go, oh, they're struggling with this part, I'm going to start doing lots of stuff on that. Strip it completely back and start with the stuff they're confident with. And then what we do is we build their self-esteem. You're amazing with your individual sounds, your single sounds in the alphabet. So let's do lots of CVC words, which are consonant, vowel, consonant words. Don't bring in those more complex sounds that are digraphs and trigraphs yet, because we want to get them really secure on this. So the whole premise of the book is to make it fun and accessible. So one, children don't know that they're learning. It's just a fun activity to do with their parent. But also it's to just strip it back. The phonics schemes in schools now, they follow this whole linear process where you're just on the train. The kids are on the train and there's no getting off. So if they're finding something difficult, they can't hop off and hop back on. It is just so linear, so rigid, that what I wanted to do is produce just lots of activities, a whole scheme, if you will, of phonics where it is play-based. You can hop in and hop out and enjoy it at your own pace, because it is all about confidence. Children love to be able to do things. They love knowing the answer and love getting it right. When they're getting it wrong all the time, it really does start to just build that reluctance in them. So I think what my key message in this is, don't start at the phase that your child's at. So it starts at phase 1, which is your preschoolers, and it goes to phase 6, which is your children in year 2, who are like 7 and 8. Don't start at that chapter. Start way back then. Get them really confident. Show them they can do it, and then build from there. Because if we can build that confidence in our children, they will thrive. That's a fact.
Okay, that's really great to hear, because one of the things I'm really keen to do with my son is make sure that I keep his self-esteem high in the process of sort of going through school being dyslexic, because I'm dyslexic myself and I know what it's like. It's very easy to spend your whole schooling life feeling like you're just not good at stuff. And it's only when you get out into the adult world that you start to learn that there are other things that you are good at and that you can thrive at, or different ways to go about achieving the same goal. So that's really interesting to hear then, that we should start right back at the levels sort of almost below what they're good at, to get them feeling confident to do it before we kind of push on to a higher level.
Absolutely. It's like stepping stones. You want them to just feel really secure and then build up from that. And I think that's where the education system does fail our neurodivergent children, our children with dyslexia, who find it much harder to process it. It doesn't mean that you're not good at anything if you're dyslexic. And this is what frustrates me so much about the education system, is that anywhere else in our lives, we are told to look at what we're really good at and enjoy what we're good at and throw ourselves into that. And then the education system's like, you need to be good at maths, you need to be good at English, and that's that. Whereas actually, no, like we need to tap into what we're good at. So think about what your son is fantastic at. Is it construction? Is it building? Is it Lego? Is it crafts? Is it art? If it's something like that,
Yeah, he's so creative. He's so creative and he's got so many ideas and he's really good with people.
so use that to his knowledge and use that to his best interest. So if he's really arty and crafty, get phonics into your arts and crafts, get some magnetic letters and get him stamping with those and using paints. I think there's this whole idea that arts and crafts and playtime is for younger children, but our oldest children would benefit from so much more play that they get in schools, at home. If we think about the lack of play that we have now, because children are off doing all these different activities after school, and there's just so little time for play. So what I would always just stress is that think about what they're good at and use that to channel all of that writing and phonics skills that you can embed into it. And in the book, there's like so many ideas about how you can get arts and crafts in, and even things like, I'm really big on multi-sensory approaches, but because what I find is that my children are so dysregulated when they get back from school, that I want to have this sensory experience with them where we can just lose ourselves. And it's good for me as well, because I'll spend the day working, they come home and we get to play a game, we get to use some Play-Doh. And my son's 8, my oldest son, and he still loves Play-Doh. We still sit and print in Play-Doh, and it's brilliant. It's just a fantastic tool. So I can't stress enough to tap into what they're really good at and use it.
I love that. Okay, so just starting from the top again with the basics, what actually is phonics really? Like, can you explain the basics of it for parents that didn't learn this way themselves? Because we haven't always learnt this way, have we? When was it introduced, and why? What is it in simple terms?
So in 1995, the National Literacy Trust decided that this was the best way for us to teach our children. The reason why phonics is such a fantastic resource and is such a fantastic support system for reading and writing is because it breaks it down. So for someone that it has dyslexia, someone that has any kind of processing disorder, it is fantastic because it helps to break it into chunks. If phonics was taught exactly how it should be taught, in a really holistic way that children just go with the flow and go at their own pace, then there'll be no children left behind. That's fact. But in a class of 30, it's very hard to differentiate 30 different times. So I understand why that's not always the case. But so phonics, in its crux, where in schools, it is going in and learning sounds instead of names of letters. So understanding that an A says ah. What it does is it breaks those sounds down so that we can then decode words and we can segment and blend them. So for instance, if we were sounding out the word bus, instead of in our day just getting the word bus shown to us and we have to remember it by rote, you now sound and blend. So what you do is you say b-us, b-us, and you can get faster and faster if they don't hear it, and then at the end they hear bus. So that blending
Yeah.
process, segmenting is chopping the word up to spell it. So we say there's 3 sounds in the word bus. We're going to spell it together. What's the first sound? Bus. What's that middle sound? B. Us. So then what's that last sound? S. And then we're breaking it up to sound it out and spell it. So it really is just a process of decoding words. And what it does is it gives a strategy. Instead of just getting our children to remember the words, we're helping them to be able to break it down. It then turns into a bit more of a complex learning tool, because there are so many different sounds. There's things called digraphs, which are 2 letters that make one sound. And so like the O and the A coming together to make an O sound in boat. So it becomes more complex. So those that do have dyslexia or they have processing issues, that's when I think most children will become unstuck a little bit, because we're going at a speed that just doesn't sit well with them. We want to take it really slow. So what you're saying is that your son is still very much at the phase 2 phonics, which is where you're learning sounds. Moving on to that second section where you're learning 2 letters that make one sound is where he's probably struggling the most, because there's so many. So one way that I get children to remember those, and I have tutored hundreds of children with dyslexia, and it's the best way to teach these sounds, is by adding an action into each of those. So you show them one of the sounds, like the O and the A together, and you make, I have my own set of that we use at home and what I use in the classroom, but I urge you to make up your own with your son. So if you look at the O and the A and you say, this is in the word goat. We always did this because this is the goat's beard. So when I then show them the card the next day, they don't remember it. It doesn't go straight in. So then I go, and they go, oh, okay, so this is a beard, this is goat, goat, oh, and then they remember, because they've got this trail of memory nuggets that have been left for them. And that multisensory approach of getting them to move whilst they're learning really, really helps. So we add an action to everything, individual sounds and our digraphs and trigraphs. So for another instance, the S and the H come together to make the sh. So we would just go, and then my children go, hey, shh, that's the sh sound. Slowly but surely, you don't have to do the action anymore, because they've already built this memory pattern in their brain. So it adds a scaffold to their learning, which you can then take away slowly, and it helps them. So that would be my best tip for you, to go in with your son. Trying.
I love that. So you're kind of making it a bit more visual as well, aren't you? And obviously we know dyslexics are much more visual people. So rather than just having to hear the sound, you're actually giving them something to see and to kind of bank in their memory as well to go with the sound.
Absolutely. So what it is auditory, because they're hearing the sound. It's visual because you're showing them an action, and it's auditory because we're moving whilst we're doing it. So all 3 of those things put together give us this multi-sensory approach that help our children to bank it, to keep it in their memory. And it's all about building these pathways that all come together. And the more pathways we get working at the same time, our brain goes, oh, I need to do this. I need to keep this in there, and it stays. So I always say, if you can do anything in a multi-sensory way, it is the best way for our children to learn. But in the start of your question, it was, how does phonics begin? And what people often really don't realise is that there's a whole phase of phonics before phase 2. And phase 2 is what you'd learn in reception, and that's all the sounds. Phase 1 phonics is really building these stepping stones for our preschoolers to get them to understand what phonics is, gets them ready. So in the book, there is a whole chapter on phase 1. And so if you have a preschooler from 2 to 4, it is brilliant for, if I dare say it myself, and for just developing those real key skills they need to get them to that process when they start reception, and build that confidence in them already.
Okay, can you give us an example?
Yeah, of course. So there's lots of examples. So there's 7 stages of phase 1 phonics, and phase 1 phonics is it's looking at environmental sounds, so the sounds we hear all around us, instruments. It's getting us labeling instrument sounds, because what that is doing is exactly what phonics is. It's getting them to hear a sound and then give it a name. So that's all letters are, aren't they? Showing them a picture and going, oh, that's an A. So what we're doing is we're building this knowledge of deciphering different sounds and getting that phonological awareness around them. It's all about alliteration, so looking at those first sounds in words. So knowing that spaghetti and spoon start with the same sound. So I'll show you a couple from the book. There's one, it's like it's so simple, and it's things that parents would be doing all the time. So this one's called nature sounds, and it's about just going for a walk with your child and listening to what you can hear. Can you hear birds? Did you hear the leaves crunching under my feet? Giving them that vocabulary, because the speaking and the communication side of things is so important. Label everything, give it everything a sound, bang those sticks together and get those stones. And then a more complex one would be like, that's Play-Doh, so many Play-Doh. Let me get one that's blend around the house. This would be a more complex one that parents will say to me, oh, I'm not sure how to get my child blending. Oral blending is a stage that we should do with our children before we start introducing letters. So before we even show them a letter, we would like our children to be able to hear the blending process. So the way I do that, that activity there in the book is called Blend Around the House. And it's because we're giving context to the words we're blending. So we'd say to our child, oh, could you pass me that k up? And seeing if they can hear, they can see what you're asking them to pass them. Will they then just go cup? Because what we're doing is we're giving it context, they can see it, it's in a sentence, they understand what you mean, and then they're blending. That is a tick, they've blended that. Shall we go up to bed? And they're hearing it, blending it together. Yeah, let's go to bed. They probably won't say yes to go to bed, but you know what I mean.
What sort of age should we be doing this with?
So phase 1 phonics, you can start from as soon as I went to a baby group yesterday and was talking to parents about how if you just have it embedded into your life and have some letters in the bath from your baby sitting that up, that is perfect, because you're making it so it's not something that's scary for them when they do start learning it. But with blending and things like that, once they've got their concrete language and you're getting them, they're speaking in sentences, there's no reason why you can't start doing that. So 2-year-old, 2.5, 3. This is not saying we need to be teaching our children to read as toddlers. It's we need to get our children confident with sounds and letters and get them confident to start school, to start reading. But so many children will show interest before they even start school, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. One of the most frequently asked questions I get is, if I teach my child to read before they start school, will they be bored? And I always think it's insane that is the thought process that we have, because absolutely not. When your child learns to read, they have the world at their feet. They can learn anything. They can see signs. They can read what's in a box in their classroom because there's a word on there, or they have everything in front of them. So no, they will not be bored sat in a phonics lesson. They will be confident and they will be happy, and they will be saying, I know this, and they will just be relearning. And relearning is just as important as learning.
Absolutely, I can see that. So how can we help parents help their children if they're mixing up letter sounds then? So confusing ones like, obviously, "bert" and "dirt" is a common one, isn't it? As I say, with my son being dyslexic, that's a big one that we still struggle with. So yeah, how can we help there?
B and D is a really common one. They look exactly the same. It's the same with a P and a Q as well. They're just the opposite way, aren't they? So I have a visual that you can use. It's a bed. So the B starts at the beginning and the D starts at the end. Another way to do it is like what I was saying to you earlier about having an action. I always say to my children, okay, a B has a big belly and a D has a big bottom, because it goes the other way. And kids love that, because you're giving them some sort of visual in their head.
That's a great one,
I always go, remember your B has got a big belly, and remember your D has got a big bottom, and they love it. They all think it's funny. So another thing is just practice makes perfect. And I know with some sort of self-esteem issues, when we don't feel like we can do something, it often is met with, I don't want to practice because it's very boring. We've done it again and again. But even just having like shaving foam and getting them to practice and it seems really fun because it's messy. Do that in the shower. So if you don't like mess, you can get it in the shower, in the bath. Practice is key. Just practice. But visuals, giving them fun ways to do it. There are lots of letters that look the same, and there's so many letters that sound the same. So it is very confusing. It's like we teach them the whole time that a C makes the K sound, and then all of a sudden in year 1 they're learning that it also makes the sound. So their brain goes, what? Why is that now?
Yeah.
So it's just about learning rhymes and things. So we call that a soft C. So before they've even read the word, I'll say, oh, it's a soft C there. What does that mean? And they go, oh, it says a S. So it's about giving these little nuggets. Everyone will remember that scene in Matilda where they say, I know how to spell difficulty. And then they say, Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. F, F, I. So I always think about that, and I think Miss Trunchable's saying, why are you doing these silly rhymes and teaching like that? And Miss Honey's like, well, it helps them. It helps them to learn. It's exactly
Yeah.
that. What we want to do is we give them a strategy to help them to remember. So whether it's your big belly and your big bottom, or if it's a rhyme that says, this is a bed. So look at your bed. The B starts at the beginning and the D starts at the end. It's about giving them a visual or something that they can recall upon in their brain to help them.
Okay. Blending then can also be a tricky step for many children, can't it? And again, I know from my own experience how hard I found that. Why is blending so challenging for so many kids? And what's one way parents can support it at home in a way that feels encouraging rather than frustrating?
So blending's very difficult because what we do is we teach children the sounds individually, and then we're saying we need to put these sounds together. So it's very hard sometimes to not hear them as isolated sounds. So there's lots of different ways that you can work with blending. And there's so many in the book in phase 2 as well, because it is something that lots of children struggle with. So I spoke just briefly before about blending in context, giving them a visual so that you can tell them, almost you're showing them the answer, so it builds that confidence. I have a set of flashcards. I'll show you just here. That's why it's quite good that we are in the playroom. So I have a set of flashcards with the letters on them. So we've got ox here. So what we've got, the reason why, and some people think this is sort of just teaching them to suck eggs because it's all there, but they can see the picture fox, they can see the letters, and it makes it so it's in context. We are showing them the answer before they've even got it. This set of cards is for children aged 2 and above, because we want them to get them to build that vocabulary. We're giving them access and showing them the sounds and the letters that they need. But then we have a second set that have all these pictures, and it doesn't have the word on it. But there's a card that has the word on it, and then they have to match them up. Because what it does is it shows them the word, they blend it out, and then they can see an option of pictures in front of them. So it's not this out of context, difficult, complex thing for them to do. We need to give them more strategies to support their blending rather than just expect them to get it. It's not going to happen. If they are struggling with it, it's often because they're seeing them as isolated sounds. Another way to do that is by looking at word families. So lots of words, like rhyming words, end with the same 2 sounds. So if we think of the at family, we've got cat, bat, hat, mat, fat, and all of these words, they all end in AT. But the initial sound changes. So if we look at word families and just change that initial sound, they only really have to sound out 2. They only have to blend 2 sounds together because they've got the at. And so that just helps them to go b, at, bat. Much easier to hear. And then you go, okay, we're going to change that initial sound to. So now what does it say? At. And it just makes that looking at word families much easier for them to understand and to be able to visualize. And then you slowly but surely start adding different sounds in and changing it. And it's a process that we just need to help and give them these tools to support them. So I would always say, to summarize all of that, break it up nice and small so they've got smaller chunks to blend, give them visuals and give them context. If you give them those 3 things, then they will start to build this confidence around blending, and then it will happen. If you've still then got a child that you're saying at and they're going dog, you need to go straight back to the beginning and go, okay, let's start looking at our sounds again and the sounds that they make, and start looking at them and isolate them, because you will get children that still do that after all of this work. But it's just a process, so you just need to work out how slow and what pace your child needs to work at.
Okay. And then we touched on it earlier, segmenting. Can you talk us through segmenting, what it means, and a way parents can try it with their child?
So blending is for reading and segmenting is for spelling. So with segmenting, all you need to do is think of it as that you are chopping a word up to spell it. So the best way that I always found to do that is by counting the sounds in a word. So let's say that we are sounding out the word dog. We've got 3 sounds in dog. So I would always say to the children, okay, these are our sound buttons. You can do that with stickers on your fingers. You could just do it with your fingers, or you can do it with Play-Doh. You can do it with lots of different things. And so if we're doing it with our fingers, I'd say dog. Dog has 3 sounds. So we know there's a beginning, middle, and end sound. Let's see if we can hear the word, the first sound in the word dog. So we've got d, dog, dog, d, dog. What's that first sound? So I can break it up. I can say just dog, see if they can hear it. If they can't, then really accentuate that sound, d, dog. And then they'll go, that's a d. Brilliant. Can you write that on your board? Can you write it in sand? Can you write it in the shaving foam, however you're writing it? Or if your child doesn't want to write, can you find that magnetic letter? Can you find that brick with the D on it? Writing and segmenting for spelling doesn't have to be written down. It can be spelling with whatever tools you've got, because sometimes writing is that part that really stops them from doing it, because they've
definitely. My son's also got dyspraxia, so again, writing is something he doesn't want to do. So that's some great ideas there of other ways that we can do that.
We use Duplo bricks, we use Play-Doh and magnetic letters and print in it, because what we need to stop thinking is the only way children can spell is through writing it on a piece of paper. That is not the case. Sometimes I find, especially with dyspraxia, you might want to try and get him to write on vertical surfaces, so like on a door or a window, because the vertical surfaces really helps to build that skill around writing, and that the muscles in the wrist and a hand. So vertical surfaces are really good. So my kids love writing on a window. So if you don't want to do like paint sticks on a window, you can do erasable pens, because they come straight off.
I was just thinking that he would just love that experience, being able to write on the windows. That would be a great way to
feel like they're doing something naughty, and you're like, no, I'm allowing you to do this, and you get your windows cleaned at the end of it, so it's great. And so if we're doing it like that, we're breaking this word up. So we've got that first sound, we've got the d, and they've printed it, they've written it however they want, and then we go that middle sound. Let's hear that. And the middle sound is often the trickiest. So I would always go dog, dog. What sound can you see? Dog. Can you see what my lips are doing? And this portrays the O in the middle. It really helps. All of our vowels are very difficult with our mouth movements, because we've got eh. They all have an open mouth sound. I, ah. So these all make the same, but O, very good to highlight with your mouth. So this is our O. They print it, write it, however they want to do it. And then that last sound is often the easiest. Then we go dog, dog, because we can really accentuate it. So what I would say is, in summary of that, is that you just want to give them as many tools. So you want to break it down. You can use fingers, you can use whatever you want to use. And often when I'm segmenting and showing them first, I would show them with these, like there's dots and dashes underneath. So the dot show one sound, and the dash would show like a digraph or a trigraph. So it's just giving them a visual, but then also giving them all these other multi-sensory ways to do it.
Okay. And what if a child says, I can't read, or gets upset when they're finding it hard? What's a good way for parents to respond in that moment, and how can we keep them motivated?
And so this is really interesting, because my middle son, he's in year 1 this year, and he, for the first half of the year, he's reading on the reading scheme. He's, doing exactly what he should be doing. But he'd go to me, I can't read that. And it would just be like a normal children's book. And I was like, you can read any book now. You've learned to read. And he found it so odd that it wasn't one of his reading scheme books. He then thought he couldn't read it. So we had to have a whole process where we were like, you can. And he thought they were all too complex for him. So we need to strip it back. And we'll come back to my original point of, we need to build that confidence. He felt like he couldn't read more complex words and decode them and break them down. So we had to do a bit of work around that. And we started looking at 2-syllable words together, and how he can stop at a word that he's finding difficult and break it up. So we did a whole process of that. But if you've just got a child going, I can't read, or I don't want to read, that's what you need to work out, whether it's that they feel they can't, or whether they just don't want to and there's something more exciting. My first tip is, I always say, never finish a book if your child doesn't want to do it. So if you've got a book home from school and you're thinking, oh, the teacher said I've got to read this 3 times this week, and they don't even want to do it once, they do not need to read it cover to cover. They just need to have some access to it. So if they are saying, I don't want to read, you go, okay, cool, let's look at the first page. Shall we tell a story about this page? Or shall we draw a picture about it? What do you think might happen? Or if they don't want to read it at all, choose a few words from the book and play a game with them. Get them reading them on pieces of paper, put them into, we make Play-Doh eggs and shove pieces of paper in them. They have to open up the eggs and read them. So there's lots of different ways you can do it, and it sounds like it makes it more complex for you, but it doesn't, because you don't have the whole, I don't want to do this, don't make me do it. You can do it in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And I know in my experience with my son, and again from my own lived experience, it makes it worse, doesn't it, if we make them sort of more anxious about having to do it. With my son with his reading book, some days we only read a page. Some days we read the whole book, but some days it's a page. And if that's all he's prepared to commit to, and we went through a phase when he was really reluctant when he went into year one, and I think the kind of workload changed a little bit. And I think the pressure to read when he could see other children starting to learn to do it and he wasn't getting it, he found that a lot. So in the end, we were just okay with, Mummy will read. I will read a book every night, a book that you choose, and you sit with me, because I just didn't want him to lose the love of books. And thankfully, he loves books. He thinks that they're brilliant. He loves all his football collection. He sees me read. And I don't want him to lose that by forcing him to read. And gradually now he reads normally sort of half of his reading books every day, and he doesn't complain. He just kind of gets on with it. I don't think it's ever going to be his favourite thing, but he understands that he wants to learn and he wants to get better.
I think there's a statistic at the moment that said something like there's a 40% decline in enjoyment for reading in our children in primary schools. And that's insane. Like, children don't, they have this reluctance to read. Why? I can tell you the answer, because the books they bring home from school in a reading scheme are dull. They are dull. And so if we want our children to read and we want them to enjoy reading, we need to be reading to them as well as them reading to us. So just like what you said, if your child doesn't want to read, and this comes from a teacher, not all teachers will be like me, but if your child comes home and does not want to read, do not write in that reading record, like, just for the sake of it. It doesn't matter. We want them to love reading. We want them to enjoy it. So I've had weeks before where I've just written in the reading record, didn't want to read today, hasn't read today. And I will make track of it, because it's interesting for me to then go back to and say, oh, he didn't want to read then. Why didn't he want to read then? Let's have a think about that. So, and usually it's because he's too tired. He comes home from school and doesn't want to do it. Or we tend to read in the morning, so we all have reading time. But another top tip that I always tell parents is, if you want your child to read more, you need to read more, because there's that whole saying, monkey see, monkey do. And it is true. If they see you doing it, they see you enjoying reading, and they see you doing something other than, swiping on a phone, watching something, doing this, and actually setting yourself time to read. And I know we say that we're really time poor, we have no time, but in that time that you want your child to read, if they are reluctant to read, take yourself off with the book and read. Show them that you're reading and you can get enjoyment from reading. And I think it's really important for them to see that, and to see you reading alongside them. You read in your head, I'm going to read in my head. Let's talk about what our books say afterwards. And I think it's really important for them to see that.
Absolutely. My son saw that with myself, actually, because as I've mentioned several times, being dyslexic, I had this great belief that reading wasn't for me, because dyslexics don't read books, and I found it too challenging and I didn't really enjoy it. And it was only, it's probably about 4 years ago now. It's hard to even remember what exactly triggered it in me, but basically I decided, to be fair, it was probably wanting to help my son more. It's been the whole reason really behind the podcast, and my love and wanting to learn more about parenting and everything surrounding it. And I quickly realized that the only way, or one of the ways, I was going to find a lot more answers to what I was looking for was in books. There are some amazing books out there with information that can guide us with our children. And if only I could actually pick them up and read them, what I could gain from it felt so good, to the dislike of reading, because I still stand by, I don't particularly like the act of reading. I still find it hard. I still get lost all the time. I have to read the same paragraph again. I find it tiring. But I love what I gain from the books and what I read.
And you can do it at your own pace now. So whereas you probably built this reluctance to read in school because you felt the pressure to read at the pace of everyone else. I think back to when I was in school and they used to get us to read aloud, and that whole concept really blows my mind now, because I'm like, to someone that's going, oh my gosh, I hate reading, don't make me do this in front of me. You're also listening to people that can do it at pace. I read really slowly. My husband will read over my shoulder and he'll go, are you not finished that page yet? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I like to take everything in, and it will take me longer to
Mhm.
read. And I think when you can do it at your own pace, you do start to find more enjoyment in it, don't you? And I think that's what we
It's so right. And that's exactly how I started. And I kind of demonstrated that to my son, was I'm going to read 2 pages a night. And that was my aim. And gradually the 2 became 4, the 4 became 6. And gradually it was a chapter, because I kind of took the pressure off myself and realized that there is enjoyment in it. And I really wanted that for my son, that he could see that pleasure in books and not kind of have this fear that it's very easy to get, unfortunately, from, like you say, from schools, because of the pacing that they read, or the fact that, especially when you're dyslexic and you are that bit behind, having to keep up with the other children, it can feel pressured and it can cause a bit of an anxiety around reading.
Absolutely. And I think they're constantly, as human beings, we constantly compare ourselves to other people, don't we? And I think in a school
Yeah.
setting, it is very difficult for children. I know that my niece is finding it really difficult at the moment because she feels like she's in the group that are slower. And she says that. She says, I'm with children that can't do it. And I do think that's just really sad, because why is she not in and amongst children that are of all abilities, that are all just
Mhm.
doing what they can? It will then give her more motivation to see other people doing more, but it'll also make her do it at her own pace. Whereas if she sat around children that she thinks can't do it, she then also believes that she can't. It's about changing this
Mhm.
mindset of our children and giving them and instilling this confidence in them that it doesn't matter if you can't do this or you can't do that. You're not always going to be the fastest. You're not always going to be able to sing in the most beautiful voice. There's lots of things that we can't do, but there's so many things that we can do. And I think that's where we need to change this narrative with our children. I think you're setting an amazing example for your son, because even though you find it difficult, you're still doing it and showing him that. I do the same. I find things. So a year ago, I would never have been able to sit here on a podcast because I've always really suffered with anxiety. And I had 2 book events this year, and I had to speak in front of groups. And I said to my children, I want you to know how hard this is for mummy, and I'm doing it because
Yeah.
I know I can do hard things. And I think it's
Mhm.
something we need to show our children, that things that we do find hard, we're
Absolutely.
going to do and we can do. And we can. It's
Yeah.
just that inner voice. It's in our head, are going, you can't do this, but
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
do it.
And you're right, the more you push yourself, the more you kind of, you get used to doing it. You break through those limiting beliefs, don't you? And you can. It's surprising. I was the same with the podcast. I mean, you could probably tell in my intros, I still get really tongue tied when I'm trying to read a little bit of information about somebody. I find it nerve wracking to read on camera. I struggle to get my words out, but I want to get good at it. So I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to keep
I don't
doing
think
it.
that
And
comes across at all. Anyway, yeah,
oh,
you need
thank
to
you.
be
But
that doesn't. You are amazing at it, and this is the thing. I think we need to just feel more confident. And so, for our children to be more confident, we need to be more confident. I think you're doing an amazing job. I wouldn't have said that you stumbled at all.
oh, thank you. But yeah, I love that. Set the example. So just lastly, I had one other question, which I know we've again kind of touched on, but how can we keep phonics fun and playful, especially for children who don't seem interested or are resistant to reading?
Shameless plug, but buy the book, obviously.
Yeah,
But
love
in
it.
summary, the reason why I'm such an advocate for the book, and obviously I wrote it, it's going to be there, but it is literally my brain in one book. And me, I have experience of being in the classroom, and I also have experience of having all 3 of my children have very different experiences with learning to read and write. And I think that we just need to keep it as playful as possible. So what I've done is I have 3 very different children. They are completely different from one another. So what I've been able to do is take all of the ways that they learn and put it into one book. So I'm hopefully encapsulating all children and all the ways that they learn, and putting it into these activities, because if we make learning fun, we will get our children to want to learn. And that is the hardest part. Getting them motivated to
Mhm.
learn, getting them enthusiastic about learning is the hardest part. Children learn, like that's a given.
Yeah,
It's just knowing how they learn best that we need to focus on,
yeah,
and doing it at their pace. So why this book is so good, and why I would want every single school to do phonics like this, is because What we're doing is
Yeah.
we're playing, and playing is so important. We have lost this art of play because we're so busy all the
Mm-hmm.
time. But what I can only urge you to do, and it doesn't have to be a reading and writing based activity, but what I urge people to do is just play more with their children, because I can assure
Mm-hmm.
you there will never be one time that you play where you think afterwards, I wish I didn't do that. Play
You're so
is
right.
amazing for everybody. Even if you like, even now,
Yeah.
that's why we can buy adult Lego sets now, because people can
Mm-hmm.
immerse themselves in it. Forget about everything else for a minute and have 15 minutes of time playing, doing some art, crafts, even if you're not artsy and crafty. Quite often,
Mm-hmm.
I told myself, I had two sisters who were fantastic at art. They were amazing at it. So I told myself as a child that I wasn't very good because I couldn't do what they could do. But actually, in
Mm-hmm.
my older years, I now think, wow, I am really good at this because I've practiced, I've
Yeah.
put myself out there to be better. I'm very good at copying things. I've not got an artistic eye, but it's about
Mm-hmm.
channeling into yourself, finding out what you think that you're not very good at, and then finding out
Mm-hmm.
why. Because usually the why is
Mm-hmm.
because we don't feel confident with it. And if that's just holding you back to doing something that you can lose yourself in and have this mindful moment and enjoyment with your children, then just do it, because you're never going to have a moment where you go, I wish I didn't do that.
You're so right. I kind of live by that when I go to bed every night. If I have had that time when I play, I do go to bed and I feel good about the time that we had that connection. Whereas on the nights when I didn't do it, because I convinced myself that it was more important to finish the washing or something else that I wanted to do on my phone, I do go to bed and I genuinely sit there and think, why did I think that was more important? You never regret doing
No.
it. You never
And
do. So
sometimes
you'll always regret not
it's
doing
always
it.
good to remember as well that play looks different to everyone. Everyone finds
Mm-hmm.
playful moments in different things, but also just adding your children into the mundane tasks of life. Children just want to be with their primary caregivers. That's a given. Like, when you learn about how the children's brain works, they just want to feel connected with you. So any time you can give them is great. And so when I say this to people, they're like, your children like doing chores. Yes, because they love being with me. So my kids love cooking dinner with me, and I will always feel much better about things if I allow them that time with me to cook, rather than going, oh, can mummy just do this by herself today, because I need that time.
Mm-hmm.
I will go to bed, like you say, feeling much better that I let them help. Or even just doing the washing,
Yeah.
teaching them to fold is a very, very fun activity, but they really like it. So they're always on
Yeah.
tea towel duty and they always fold all my tea towels. But just getting them
Yeah.
involved and having a chat with them, and sometimes whilst I'm doing the washing, sorry, my dogs come to see me. Sometimes whilst we're
No,
doing the
it's nice.
washing, we just make up different stories whilst we're doing the washing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just that time together that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right. Lovely. Well, thank you, Sophie. I feel like there's so much stuff in there, and for me personally, that's been a huge eye opener. And I feel like there's loads I can take away from there to help my son learn. So if I feel like that, I feel really confident that anyone listening to this is really going to benefit from this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, I'm a massive advocate of your book. You sent me a copy and I've been really enjoying that so far as well. So we'll put out a link for that as well so everyone can see the book.
Thank you very much.